This Lent, many of us in this church have been praying, reading, and learning about a very famous prayer known as the Serenity Prayer. If you're not familiar with it, I highly recommend you look it up and pray it often because it is a life-changing prayer. It begins with a couple of petitions which go like this: God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change and the courage to change the things I can and the wisdom to know the difference. Jesus was not familiar with the prayer because it hadn't been written, but he certainly was familiar with the challenges that are faced by the prayer. Deciding which things are unchangeable, intractable, and we should just not even try, as opposed to those things that we are to put our best effort into bringing about a change. Jesus looked around in his day, and he had a choice to simply pray for serenity, to accept all of the things that he saw, people who were at war with God, at war with themselves, at war with one another. People who could not find any peace. People who found much cause for resentment and envy and hatred. People who lived in a world very stratified in its hierarchy of who was important and who was not. People suffering from poverty and despair. People looked, Jesus looked around, and Jesus decided to pray for courage to change those things. It would have been tempting to accept them, to think that this is the world as it is and always will be. But Jesus said, I will pray for courage, and I will try to change the world into more of what it is that God intended. And so he and his friends went from up in the north in Galilee, and they headed down to the dangerous city of Jerusalem, where people would be waiting to oppose him. And he decided to enter that city in a way that he would let others know what he was coming for. Now, he could have marched into the city, and it could have looked like he's leading a violent revolution. He could have ridden a horse and sent a message that he was here for a violent revolution, but instead he said, get me a donkey. So there will be absolute clarity that people know I am coming as a revolutionary, but a peaceful revolutionary, using different weapons and eyeing different goals. Palm Sunday, Jesus entered Jerusalem leading what increasingly to me seems like was a peace parade. A peace parade. Jesus knew what was going on in many people's lives. Jesus knew what people were thinking and what they were feeling. Jesus knew that many people went through life feeling judged, feeling condemned, believing that there was a God, but this God was angry with them. This God was always looking at them with the eyes of judgment. And Jesus said, I am coming to help bring peace between you and God. I'm here to reconcile you to God. He brought peace with God. Jesus knew that many people are hard on themselves, judging themselves, condemning themselves, feeling like their lives are a failure, a disappointment. They just haven't gotten the job done. They are inadequate. And Jesus came to bring people a peace with themselves, to reconcile themselves to their true self, to see themselves as God sees them. Jesus came with a message to you and me and to all people, saying, be gentle with yourselves. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. Jesus came to bring all that. He said to the crowds, you who feel so unworthy, who have been told you are unworthy, you are beloved. You are worthy of love. He said, you know that ring that Frodo and Bilbo and everybody tried to get their hands on? You're more precious than that. You are precious indeed, priceless and beloved. That's what Jesus came to bring, that message. Peace with God, peace with yourself. So important, so lacking still today, and yet that's what Jesus brought. However, it was not enough. Because Jesus knew, as we do, we also need peace with one another. He asks us on this day of his peace parade, is there anybody in your life right now with whom you are not at peace? A family member, a friend, a neighbor. Is there anyone that you are angry with this morning? Is there anyone who has hurt you, offended you, and you're holding on to those hurts? And yes, it might be they are the ones that need to apologize, and they are the ones that need to make the phone call. And yet, I think Jesus challenges us today and says, you can call them. There's no need to wait. Be reconciled. See if you can be reconciled with those people that you are just not right with. And see if it's possible for the damage to be repaired, for things to be made right, for whatever reparations need to happen. Jesus says you can have peace with one another. It is hard work, but let it begin, and let it begin today with us. Let's be honest. Peace with God, peace with ourselves, peace with family, friends, neighbors. What a huge gift Jesus has given to us, even though it may be hard work for us to be able to live that out. But even that is still not enough. Jesus challenges us also to bring about peace between people. What a week. The headline read, America returns to normal with 2 mass shootings. One shooting rooted in a deep-set racism against Asian American women. Both shootings absolutely senseless and preventable. It seemed like 2020 was a peaceful year, doesn't it? You just didn't hear much about mass shootings. It seemed like maybe things were getting better. Did you know that the year 2020 had the highest number of gun deaths in our country in over 2 decades? 20,000 people died from gun homicides in 2020. Highest number in 2 decades. Sometimes we kid ourselves and think it's only mass shootings, it's only these assault-type weapons that are the problems. But those are a small part of the problem. The problem is handguns. The problem is daily shootings, which are under the radar of our awareness. 2020, 20,000 people were shot to death, and the number of people who shot themselves to death, 24,000. Also, many preventable if people didn't have a gun and easy access to it. Homicides in our country also, as you and I well know, disproportionately affect people of color. It was a big year for the gun manufacturers. We didn't hear much about it, but the three largest, Smith & Wesson, Remington, Ruger, huge profits last year. Almost $1 billion each in sales. You know, the violence business is a profit-making business for some, and they will oppose peacemaking efforts with all they can. Jesus' Peace Parade was a message for us. He says to you and me, I don't want you to pray for serenity to accept guns and violence and homicides and suicides as inevitable. Don't accept those. Instead, he says, pray for the courage to change those things. There are lots of opportunities. We hear about some of them here. We can join in marches. We can join in our Good Friday walk for peace. We can try to put into effect sensible gun policies, supporting organizations like our partners, Israel's Gifts of Hope, Moms Demand Action, and others. We can attend bystander intervention training as offered through organizations like the HANA Center, others working with Asian Americans. We can try to help families who've been the victims of violence and support them so they don't seek retaliation responding to violence with violence. We can do what we can to help people out of poverty so there is less desperation leading to less violence. Today is a peace parade, and Jesus asks each of us, will you join in? Will you be on the side of peacemaking? What will your sign say that you will show to the world? Jesus led a peace parade. It seemed like a good idea. Nice message, non-threatening message. 5 days later, he was hanging on a cross for it. Peacemaking is no easy task. Many oppose it. But since we have peace with God through Jesus, and since we have peace with ourselves through Jesus, let's pray for the courage to make peace with one another and with our neighbors. And let's pray for the courage to overcome the violence and the racial hatred and the fear and the despair which is so epidemic around us. Today is the day we are invited to join in a peace parade where Jesus leads the way.